I guess we'll circle back. We didn't miss anything. We were starting. So you're in Jersey right now. Sort of what are you up to as of right now, balancing lacrosse? What are you doing in terms of lacrosse-wise and work-wise?
Yeah, so ever since coronavirus hit, my life has been a bit crazy, which I know that in some way it's had an impact on everyone's life to whatever degree that is. But mine actually got busier, which is kind of interesting because I think some people didn't really have much to do at first, because we're used to, as lacrosse players, going to clinics and camps and being in person and traveling a lot. I know for me, before coronavirus, I was on a plane every other week going somewhere. So that's something that's changed for me. But I've also, been picking up a lot of virtual clinics, which I think is awesome. I think that the way that we were able to pivot from in-person to virtual so quickly was really great, and a great opportunity for us to connect with players across the country and even across the world. I had someone from Hong Kong on one of my virtual clinics, so I thought that was awesome because I think the hardest part for me in all of this, I'm a people person and I love being around other people, talking to other people, and so not having that personal connection was tough, but these virtual clinics have allowed me to keep that interaction and meet girls who I may have not even met in person at clinics, because I might not go to their area that they're from. And so I think it gives the girls an opportunity to kind of meet with us. And I know it's not face-to-face, but on a personal level, even if they maybe wouldn't have been able to before COVID. So I've been staying busy with a lot of virtuals. I also work at Quest Diagnostics, which is a lab, and I work in the sports and human performance franchise. So obviously with COVID and us being I think we run the most COVID tests in the country out of all companies right now. With that being said, me working in the sports performance side of things, I have all of my clients are professional teams, and so we actually just signed a deal with the NBA and started last week testing with them for every other day for their practices before they head to Orlando for their quarantine. And so I've been on that task force and super busy with that. So my life has been pretty crazy.
Wow. That's awesome. So I heard the NBA now has some sort of ring that can detect whether you have symptoms 3 days before. Have you heard about that at all?
No, I haven't heard about that. That's not us. That's cool.
Yeah, my brother filled me in yesterday. I was just like, that is insane, because obviously we sort of have to follow protocol up to the season, but that's awesome though. So how long have you been working at that company for?
So September will be 2 years. So it's been, 2 years already. I've switched my roles a couple of times, and but it's been a really great learning experience for me. And it allows me to do lacrosse as well. And so that's one thing that I've enjoyed, is just it really hasn't impacted my lacrosse career at all. I'm able to attend all of my games, run clinics across the country. I recently just joined the PLL team. I'm going to be the director of their girls' academy, so I'm able to do that as well. Obviously, we shifted from in-person, that was supposed to be this summer, to more virtual things, and so that's why I've been staying busy with the PLL virtual as well.
That's awesome. So coming out of college, did you try to find a job? I know you said you're enjoying it, but did you try to find a job that you could balance lacrosse? Number one was that your...
Lacrosse is definitely my number one priority. I think that, being on the U.S. team and playing in the WPLL, it's always been my dream to be a professional athlete. And so I'm able to do that, but I also wanted to explore other options. So for me right now, my job was kind of just to get a taste of the corporate world and see, what's life going to look like after lacrosse? What do I think that I see myself in? And it actually has been a pretty eye-opening experience. So one thing I didn't mention that I'm also keeping busy with is that I'm going back to school to become a registered dietitian. So I am in night classes right now. I'm in an accelerated 7-week chemistry program with lab, as well as intro to nutrition. So that ends July 9th, and then I'll start back up in the fall semester at the end of August, completing those prereqs before I apply to schools. And so the job that I'm in now really made me realize that I want to interact with patients more on a patient interaction level rather than just working on the corporate side of things. And so it's really, like I said, been a good experience for me and also led me into the direction that I want to go next in the next chapter of my life. So I'm excited. These classes are pretty tough because they're, like I said, accelerated 7-week programs, but it's been really fun, and it just makes me more excited about what the future holds.
You've obviously got a ton going on right now. What's your like typical day time split kind of look like? Are you putting X amount of hours into the lacrosse, X amount into like a certain amount of virtual lessons, like 3 hours into school, a couple hours into Quest? Like what's your time splits look like?
Yeah. So right now, I'd say like a day in the life would probably be I wake up, work out, do lacrosse things in order to stay in shape, and then I'll probably log on for my Quest job at around 8 a.m. I'll be working on that all day, and then at about 5 p.m., sometimes at 4:30, I do a virtual clinic for PLL like twice a week, and then my class starts at 6 p.m. So my day is completely filled. But like for now, like I have a lunch break too that I'm taking advantage of right now and doing this podcast. So there's some holes here and there where I can like take a break and eat and do other things, but they're very limited and I don't have that many of those. So yeah, and then on the weekends, I try and jam all of my virtuals on the weekends as well.
Wow. So you're going to school to become a registered dietitian. How much are you into that now, and what does your kind of diet look like now? And just with what you've been doing with classes, have you been learning a lot more, or is it a lot that you kind of are already aware of? How's that?
Yeah.
How's that?
So I think right now my intro to nutrition class is definitely like some things that I already knew, but going a little bit deeper into like the chemistry behind it and in our body, the reactions that happen to certain things that we intake. But I think for me, the reason why I became passionate about this and decided to take this path is because obviously as an athlete, we need to make sure that we're, eating the right things in order to perform well. But I realized that it's also really important for the general population in order to stay healthy and prevent certain diseases. And so I think that's the route that I want to go into, not necessarily sports nutrition. As much as I am passionate about that, and because I am an athlete, I do want to help those in need. And I think that's why I decided to go this route. I didn't want to be a nurse or a PA, and so I thought that a registered dietitian was a perfect fit for me. Bringing in like my experience through being an athlete, and then also being able to have that patient interaction and help those in need who might have certain autoimmune diseases or other underlying medical conditions that their diet plays an important role for their health. So hopefully I'm hoping to work in a hospital, like I said, rather than like a health and wellness center or a sports nutrition type center.
Awesome. That's awesome. So you mentioned like the dietitian stuff helping with like disease and stuff like that. With just like COVID now, like one thing that I've heard and hasn't been like talked about a ton is just how your diet can help build your immune system and in turn kind of help fight off COVID and stuff like that. Is there anything that you're specifically trying to like focus on with nutrition that is either A, beneficial for lacrosse, and B, at the same time kind of beneficial for those other outside of lacrosse needs that you talked about?
Yeah, I think that with COVID, obviously there's a lot of uncertainty and that can lead to stress. And I think when we're in these stressful situations and thinking negatively, that does have, unfortunately, a negative impact on our immune systems. And so before like getting into the diet aspect of it, I think one, it's trying to stay as stress-free as possible. Now, I'm not saying that you can't have, a little bit of stress. Like I said, it's normal to be stressed in uncertain situations, but it's how do you react to that? And so what I've been stressing a lot to girls who I'm talking to on Zooms is like, take the negatives that are going through your mind and turn them into positives. And that's a lot easier said than done, but for me, that's really helped because I think that obviously there's a lot of things that are going on in our country right now that seem extremely negative. But I think for me, it's been a really good learning experience for me. I've learned more about myself in the past 3 months than I have in the past few years. So I think that's just like one example of turning negatives into positives in order to help yourself stay stress-free, which will help build your immune system and not weaken it. And then with that being said, like your diet is also super, super important. And when we are stuck inside and we're not able to maybe exercise as much because we don't have our personal trainer who pushes us and we don't have access to a gym, it can be pretty hard. And we're just sitting around not doing much and eating whatever's in our sight. So it's definitely important to make sure that during this time, we're taking the time to, make sure that we're eating healthy and eating a good balance. I'm not saying that every meal has to be the healthiest meal ever, but make sure that you're, taking your vitamins and having a well-balanced meal and not always eating unhealthy, but making sure you're intaking the right nutrients in order to build that immune system.
Awesome. That's awesome. It's interesting bring up like stress levels in terms of nutrition, obviously your overall health. I guess from your schooling standpoint, is there anything around like stress management in terms of like your overall health that they try to focus on for you to preach to somebody or for you to learn? Is there something along those lines?
So in my classes right now, we haven't really touched on that, but I think that, like I said earlier, that's so important, and I don't think we realize how much of a toll that takes on our body. Like mental health is just as important, if not more important, than physical health, and it does directly impact your physical health. So it is really important to make sure that we're managing our stress levels during these times and in general if we want to make sure if we want to stay healthy and live a healthy lifestyle.
So when did you start to realize how important nutrition and your diet could be? Like, was that during college? Was that after college? And when did you really start like diving deep into that? And really, obviously, I'm guessing you feel very strongly about it yourself as an athlete.
Yeah, I mean, probably in college. I think that in high school I could eat whatever I want and not really see it impact me on the field. And I was like a twig, size of my pinky, so I didn't really understand how important it was. But when I got to college and continued to eat like that and like full transparency, like drink, it took a toll on my play, on my body. I gained so much weight, and so it was a pretty rude awakening for me. And it's something that I try and stress now too with the younger girls, that it just because you might not feel that whatever you're eating or what your diet is impacting you in the field, it is, and it's going to catch up to you one day. And so the earlier you start with those healthy habits, the better, especially when you do get to college. And if you want to step on the field right away and compete at that highest level, if you're implementing all of the right practices, especially within your diet, it'll help. So definitely a rude awakening for me when I got to college, but I was able to figure it out.
So for you, I think like everybody has their own sort of diet and like what works for them. Is there something specific that you try to follow? I mean, a lot of people go the vegetarian routes. Is there anything specific to you that works?
Yeah, no, I'm not vegetarian. I'm not keto. I'm not Whole30. I don't really know if I believe in those types of things for athletes. I mean, I think the vegan stuff is pretty interesting after everyone watched Game Changers on Netflix and was like, I'm going vegan. So I thought that was interesting. But for me, like I mentioned earlier, the biggest thing for me is balance. Make sure you're eating well-balanced meals. Carbs are important for athletes. So Whole30, keto, I mean, athletes need energy, and we get our energy from our carbohydrates. And like you guys know, we always had a pasta meal before game day, right? Pasta or other types of meals that are rich in carbs so we can be fueled and ready to play. So I just make sure that I'm eating everything, and obviously like not eating fast food every day, and but also leaving some room for dessert. I love dessert. I have a huge sweet tooth, so I like firmly believe that if I'm eating healthy all day, like I can have some dessert. And so yeah, I just follow, life being about balance, and that's pretty much what I do for my diet.
You focus on the time of when you're eating things at all, or do you try to eat like certain things before a workout, or do any like time restricted eating? Like we've had some people, like, I personally do the intermittent fasting. Like we've had some people mention stuff like that, but do you like take into account like just time frames or when you're eating certain things at all?
Not really. I always make sure I eat breakfast though. Like people skip breakfast, but it really is the most important part of the meal. Now it's fine if you do intermittent fasting and you have breakfast later on in the day. I think that's different. I personally don't do intermittent fasting, but I've heard great things about it. I'm only 2 classes into my nutrition, so I can't be stressing what's good and what's not yet. I'm just trying to learn the basics before I actually get my degree. But I have never done intermittent fasting or really worried about times. I just make sure that I'm eating the right amount. So I eat breakfast, I have a snack before lunch, snack before dinner, and then my dessert. So I'll definitely eat more than 3 times a day. I think some people think like breakfast, lunch, dinner, but it's also important to implement those healthy snacks in between, like a smoothie or like carrots and hummus. So that's pretty much what I do.
Nice. And then you mentioned, sorry, you mentioned too, like how you were a twig in high school, and obviously alluded to possibly the fact that you're probably more into training and lifting weights now. When did you kind of get into that stuff? Was that probably college too? And when do you kind of advise like the younger girls that you talk to start taking that stuff seriously?
So I definitely always took my strength training and conditioning training seriously in high school. And I've always done that, but I think that it's definitely something I try and stress to the younger girls who are playing now. I think it's great how much they work on stick work and go to these clinics and practice outside to have the best stick work possible. But, that can only take you so far, right? We need to make sure that we're in shape. Our endurance levels are up. We're strong, and also strength training is a way to prevent injury. And I don't think at a young age you realize that. And so that's also why it's super important. And so I took it seriously throughout high school, but it's definitely something that I try and stress a lot to the girls when I'm at clinics or coaching them.
So did you have a trainer that you worked on like strength and weightlifting?
Yeah, I went to Velocity. You guys know what Velocity is, right? Maybe not. It's like, so it's a performance center, and they have like different franchises across the country, but I think they were bought out, so I don't know if there are like any Velocities left anymore, but it's meant for athletes. So it's a performance center where we had like group sessions, and a lot of girls from my high school went there, so we went every day or every other day after school. But then I met my personal trainer through there, and when he moved to a different company, then I went straight to him. So I still go to him when I'm home, but yeah.
That's awesome. What did sort of your like weight training look like in high school?
So, I want to say we did like some conditioning work and cardio and things like that when we first got there, and then we lifted after. So we lifted every time we went. We definitely did not take days off from lifting. But it was a lot of like clean snatches, squats, a lot of those. But we lifted to try and add weight every week and make sure that we were getting stronger rather than just staying at the same weight. That was something that was strongly emphasized when I was there.
So you mentioned that you went with your friends and your teammates. Like I sort of did the same. It was like, hey, wherever your friends are going, you go with them. And were most of your friends your teammates, and did you guys play other sports as well?
Yeah, so most of my teammates at my high school actually went Division I to play lacrosse. I know that some high schools you only have a couple of those, but we had a lot, so we had a lot in common. We were all, we worked hard, we were dedicated, and so we went and trained together, which was nice. I think that helped me, being surrounded by so many great high school players. It helped me become the best player that I could be, so it was really great to be a part of such an incredible program at Moorestown. And then we all played other sports. Half of us played field hockey in the fall, and then the other half of us played soccer, and then a couple played volleyball. So I played soccer, and I loved every second of it. I played until I went on to go to UNC. I miss it so much. And I think that being a multi-sport athlete is something that I would never, ever, ever take back. I'm starting to see a lot of younger players think that they need to start to focus on one sport in order to become an expert in that. But just because you play multiple sports doesn't mean you put down the stick for the fall and winter and then only pick it up in the spring. You can still work on it. And so I played lacrosse all year round, but I also played other sports. And I think the biggest thing with that is that soccer gave me something to look forward to. And then when soccer season was over, it gave me lacrosse to look forward to. So I was able to interact with a different group of people and be in a different environment and do different things rather than the same thing over and over again, which I strongly do believe can lead to burnout, because to be quite honest, I have been burnt out from lacrosse and I love it. I love lacrosse, and I was burnt out after the World Cup in 2017, right before my senior year of college. And senior year is supposed to be your best year, right? And it ended up being fine, but when I came back to school, I was just so exhausted from lacrosse. So that's why I stress at a young age to not give up on other sports just because you feel like you have to excel in lacrosse only and only focus on that.
100%. Yeah, I completely agree. I remember my summers because you play so much from fall to spring. It was like the summers I took off. They're like, hey, you want to come play? No, I'm good. I want to stay away from it a little bit. So I could imagine you being a stud soccer player as well. What led you in the direction of playing just lacrosse in college?
Yeah. So when I was younger, I always I wanted to be the next Mia Hamm, because as a female, we did not have exposure like we did to male athletes. We all knew who Michael Jordan was, LeBron, Kobe, everyone, all the male athletes, because it was on TV and we had that exposure, but female sports just wasn't there yet. And so Mia Hamm, obviously being probably one of the best female athletes in American history, was really the only one that I knew of. And so that's why UNC was my dream school, because of her and Michael Jordan and because of the colors. And so I thought that I was going to play soccer at UNC, get a scholarship. And I played soccer longer. I started in kindergarten. And then in third grade, I got a stick for Christmas and didn't really know what lacrosse was. But like I mentioned earlier, it's really big in my hometown. So my parents got me a stick. They didn't play lacrosse. They grew up in Philadelphia, in the city. When I say that, I don't mean Conestoga or Haverford, all of those people that say they're from Philly. So they grew up in the city where there just wasn't lacrosse. And so I wasn't really introduced to it, but third grade's pretty early. Got a stick, fell in love with it immediately, and I knew that I wouldn't stop from there. So I continued to play soccer, loved it. But for soccer, I got recruited to some D3 schools just through high school soccer, but that relies very heavily on club programs in New Jersey. I know my sister kind of went through it. She had to quit lacrosse if she wanted to be a part of one of the club programs for soccer, and she ended up sticking with lacrosse. But I think that's really ultimately what led me into the direction of lacrosse. I knew that it was something that I wanted to pursue in college, and so I had to make that tough decision, but I'm very happy that I did.
Awesome. So looking back, you obviously, things turned out for you pretty well with lacrosse and everything, but if you could talk to yourself kind of when you were approaching high school, 13, 14 years old, is there anything that you tell yourself to do differently, or anything that proved to be really beneficial and you tell yourself to definitely do the same?
Yeah, I think maybe not anything that I would do differently. I think one thing that I'm noticing now about myself after kind of being a coach is that I didn't have much. I had my backyard and a lacrosse net, and I spent so much time out there. I didn't really go to that many clinics when I was younger. I wasn't able to watch some of the top college programs in the country on TV. We just started televising women's lacrosse 2 years ago. So I wasn't able to do that. And so I think now, looking back on that and realizing how much resources there are for girls now is just like take advantage of it. And so, you know, there's YouTube videos, there's ESPNU playing women's games, especially during COVID, there was a lot on, and then ESPN3, ACC Network, be a student of the game. I think that if I had that back then, I would tell myself to do that, because we put a strong emphasis on stick work, and I just said endurance, conditioning, and strength work, but I don't know if everyone realizes how important it is to have great lacrosse IQ. You can have the best stick work in the world, you can be fit, but you have to be able to play in a team environment. Lacrosse is a team sport, and lacrosse IQ can really separate you from good to great. And so looking back then, I would say definitely learn the game as much as you can outside of just having a stick in your hand. There's more to it.
Definitely. I guess with that, so did you play club lacrosse? What was sort of your high school lacrosse situation? How did the recruiting process go for you? I know we're the same year and things started to like dwindle down to like sophomore, junior year, but how was your?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate to grow up in Moorestown, New Jersey, which was the #1 public school ranked in lacrosse in the country. So very fortunate about that, because I was able to play with some of the best high school athletes in the country in high school, and that pushed me to be better. And I was able to be coached by two amazing coaches, Mr. and Mrs. Knobloch. They're husband and wife, and I always say, like, the question on which coach had the biggest impact on your playing career in life, it's those two. They shaped me, and they led me to go to Carolina. I wouldn't have gone to Carolina without them, but anyway, that was my high school experience. Very intense, high level of play, which prepared me for the next level. And with recruiting, I remember I went to a Duke camp my sophomore year, beginning of my sophomore year. I think it was like December, and that's when like the interest really started flying in after that. And I was so confused. I was like, I didn't know that coaches could recruit me. I didn't realize how much potential I had. So I was kind of like looking at 20 to 50 ranked schools, and like Carolina was always my dream school, but I just thought that was a far reach for me. But then after that camp, all these coaches started reaching out, and then I went to this other thing in January that was pretty much a showcase, and it just got super crazy. So I visited Carolina, Duke, Maryland, Notre Dame, Princeton. I ended up visiting like 10 schools, and I remember Jenny, my coach at Carolina, being like, why is she taking so long? And I just wanted to take my time with it, because that's 4 years of your life, and I was 15 years old, and I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And so I made sure that I took my time with it. I wanted it to be the full package. I wanted to go to a school that would challenge me both academically and athletically. I remember visiting, I thought that I was like UNC all the way. I went to the UNC Duke game where Austin Rivers drained a game-winning three-pointer, and the arena went silent. Like, it was the coolest experience ever. I'm sad that UNC lost, but like, that's a game that goes down in history as one of the best UNC Duke games, and that's like that's the biggest college sports rivalry. So I was like, I'm sold, I'm going to UNC. And then I visited Maryland in February and fell in love with Kathy, the coaches, everything. And that's when I was like, this is going to be such a hard decision. And that's really what made my recruiting process a lot longer. It was really down to those two. And at the end of the day, with no disrespect to Maryland and the Terps, UNC was my dream school since I was a young girl, and that's what ended up leading me there. I had to go with my heart, and so that's why I chose UNC.
You mentioned like when you went to that recruiting camp at Duke and then started getting some interest, you were kind of like, I don't feel like I deserve this. Like, I don't think I like fit in with this stuff. And obviously UNC being a stretch for you thought, but obviously it ended up not being a stretch. Were there any moments, was it when you started getting that attention that you were like, okay, maybe I do fit in with these people, maybe I am one of the best? And then was it not until you got to UNC when you kind of got rid of that imposter syndrome and like realized like I'm really good and like I really do belong for sure? Like, what were those moments for you kind of like?
Yeah. So when I started getting interest, UNC and Duke were the first two that reached out. And I was like, all right, I'll visit, but like, I want to play in college. So I want to make sure that I'm making a decision where I'm going to be able to play and make an impact, because that's what I want to do. And so then after that January one, when all of the coaches started like flying in my inbox, that's when I started to gain a little bit more confidence. It was like, wow, maybe I can do this. Like, they wouldn't be reaching out to me if they didn't want me. And so I realized that, but I knew it was going to be hard. I didn't know, I didn't know what the future held, and I did not expect to just step on the field immediately at Carolina, because, you know, there's all of the top players in the country are going to Carolina. You're not just the only top-ranked player, right? And so I knew it was going to be hard, and I think that was really hard for me, actually, because when I got to Carolina, I was the top-ranked midfielder in the country, and rankings mean nothing, especially in high school, and it's a blank slate when you get to college. But I felt like I was letting them down if I wasn't able to live up to the expectations that they had for me. And so that was pretty hard my freshman year, fall, and then going into season, spring. But I had a couple of conversations with my coach and started to just play and not worry about those things, and ended up starting by the end of the year and in the national championship game my freshman year. So it was definitely a roller coaster, and not something that I expected to, you know, I didn't expect to step on the field and make an impact immediately. But at the same time, I knew that I could if I just worked hard and just played and put my mind to anything.
Right. And you talk about, obviously, an awesome player throughout each level. Did you sort of lean on your strengths in high school and then develop those weaknesses to ultimately be a better player? How did your sort of progression as a player start?
Yeah, I think that it's important to lean on those strengths and don't lose sight of them, but also it's important for players to recognize what their weaknesses are. Sometimes that's really hard to do because we don't want to recognize that we have weaknesses, but I definitely had some my freshman year, and that's like when I said that I went in and talked to my coach, that's literally what we talked about. We talked about things that I was doing well and things I need to work on. And I think it's important to also highlight things that you are strong in and that you're doing well, because you don't always want it to just be negative. And so that really helped me, and I think set the tone for playoffs and the rest of my lacrosse career at UNC, because ever since we had that conversation, I started every single game since. So it definitely is important to outline or highlight everything, not just look at one aspect of your game.
What were your weaknesses specifically, and did you kind of like know that those were there in the back of your head, and you just didn't really bring it up ever, and someone have to like bring it up to you?
My weakness was my mental game. Just always thought that I had to play to impress someone, or if I made a mistake, I thought that they wouldn't think I was good. Like, just all of these things running through my head that make you make more mistakes. I was always a fit athlete. I worked really, really hard in the weight room, on the field, conditioning wise. So physically I was okay, but mentally that affected everything for me and affected my play, and that was a weakness that I had.
How did you sort of build on that confidence? Was it just a support system? Did you lean on people, or did you just continue to push through?
So my confidence actually, so even when I started to start and have a pretty significant role as a freshman, I still wasn't super confident. And then my coach told me to sign up for USA tryouts, and I looked at him and told him he was crazy. I was like, Phil, I'm not you're insane. And he was like, Marie, who cares if you make it? It's a great experience. You're going to be with 120 other athletes, some of the best lacrosse players in the world, for one weekend. You should just do it. So I was like, okay, fine. So I went to tryouts, and this was a week after we lost the national championship to Maryland. And I went to tryouts, did not have any expectations. It was just like, I'm just going to play. And so because I wasn't mental about it, and I was playing pretty well, I still was like, I'm not going to make the U.S. team. This is crazy. And then I remember that Saturday, during tryouts, I called my mom. I was like, I think I can do this. And then they called my number that Sunday that I made the team. And so I think from then on, that was really the turning point for me. It's really just been a matter of like believing in myself, and that really helped with my confidence. And I think that really from then on, I've had much better confidence levels and haven't been as mental while I play after that moment right there.
With those mental struggles, how did it kind of affect your play on the field? It's like for me personally, I had the same thing where I kind of had like huge high expectations for myself, came in, had missed a couple seasons before, and when I didn't meet those expectations for myself, it just like turned into like a mental snowball, and like I could feel it literally affect me on the field. Like there's times I literally wouldn't be able to feel my legs and stuff like that. But I know like now it was mostly a lot of it was just stemming from like mental stuff. How did it kind of affect you as a player?
Yeah, it was. I mean, the problem with me is that I would be scared to make mistakes because I wanted to impress people. It wasn't because, like, I wanted to score goals or play well. It's like I wanted to prove people wrong. And that's just not how you should really enter a game thinking. Like, you should work hard to be the best individual self that you can be that will ultimately help your team win and elevate the play of those around you. And so I think that made me make more mistakes because I was playing tentative. I was scared to do certain things. And it just led to even more mistakes and just not really, even if I wasn't like hurting the team, I felt like I wasn't really doing much. And I knew that I could do more if I just played. So that's pretty much how it impacted me my freshman year.
It's huge. So I guess with that, I attest to that because I remember the same thing. I went to USA tryouts and I had zero expectations. I was like, I don't even know why I got invited to this, and then ended up getting asked back. So for you, are you goal oriented still? Do you have personal goals? Did they evolve, or do you sort of not go with the flow, but sort of take punches as they come?
Yeah, no, I definitely have goals. I think that it's really important to set goals for yourself if you want to be successful in life and continue to set those even when you reach them. Like, you should never be satisfied. And that's kind of what my mindset is. I've played at the highest level and like the pinnacle of our sport, like at the US level. I've won gold medals and that's great, but I shouldn't just stop there. And so whether it's the smallest goal possible, like working on my left hand or, making sure that my shooting accuracy is better and getting shots on goal, like it doesn't have to be a big goal like making the US team or being a first team All-American for people who are still in college. It's the mini goals that will help you reach those bigger goals, and that's what's important for me.
And your honestly career can speak volumes to a lot of people and everybody sees the success, but for you, was there times that sort of maybe you weren't playing up to your performance? Did you have like put a poor investment in your time and your work ethic? Maybe times that maybe you were a little complacent. Were there any points in your career?
Yeah, after I graduated college, I think that I got a little too comfortable and confident in myself, like thinking, oh, I'm a natural athlete. I'll be fine without my strength and conditioning coach and without everything. And that probably so the summer was fine because that's right out of college, WPLL season. But that October was probably the worst lacrosse I've ever played in my life at our US training weekend. And it was so bad and just extremely eye-opening for me. Like, okay, you are not invincible just because you are Marie McCool or was a first-team All-American at UNC. It's, again, entering a next chapter of your life with a clean slate. It doesn't matter what you did. It doesn't matter that you were on the U.S. team on a gold medal-winning team in 2017. All of that is in the past. And so it was a rude awakening, but it helped me get back on track. And I think that the last training weekend we had in November, I finally felt back to my normal self and even in better shape than I ever have been, even when I wasn't UNC. So yeah, it was not great lacrosse, but it was a lesson that I learned.
Then when you graduated and had that kind of lull, is there anything that you've added to your habits or routines or that's been super beneficial? Like if you could look back and be like, all right, since then I started doing this, what would be the one thing that sticks out as giving you the most benefit kind of?
I think probably just staying on schedule as much as possible. I think when you're on your own, it can be hard to do that, and you feel like you have this time in the afternoon to do something, and so you're like, oh, I'll just do it later, and you get off schedule, but then you don't end up doing it. And so I think just making sure that I'm managing my time, sticking to my routine, is the most important thing that I'm trying to do, because with working out, like I just said, I don't have a strength conditioning coach and a mandatory lift at 8 a.m. So there's nothing that I have to do. So it's how do you keep yourself motivated to do those things and make sure you're putting in the work that will help you lead to success on the field.
100%. Do you see now being a graduate and in the sort of business side of things, going to school, do you see sort of sports and being a part of team sort of trickle over to other parts of your life and how it affects you positively or negatively?
Yes. Oh my gosh. So when I was a senior at UNC and had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, everyone's like, you'll get a job. Like you're an athlete. Like there's so many things that you learn from being an athlete that are so transferable to the corporate lifestyle. You know how to be a good team member, you know how to communicate, you have leadership skills. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And then I was just like, whatever, like I don't know how much it'll actually like transfer over. Like I'm sure everyone works hard when you work with them. That is not the case. So what I've learned is like how valuable being an athlete really is and how it does prepare you for the next chapter of your life and whatever you decide to pursue after your playing career is over. It's made me realize how lucky I was to be a part of teams with girls who are hard workers, who are great leaders, because now I've also been on teams with people who didn't play sports and aren't team players, and it's hard. I'm like, what is wrong with you? But then I'm like, okay, Marie, not everyone was an athlete at a high level like you. So it just makes me realize like how special being a student athlete really is and what it prepares you for.
100%. And you talk about leadership, obviously being a huge piece to playing sports. How did that sort of develop? You talked about maybe like you were having trouble with confidence, then you played at USA and being a captain. So how did that sort of develop your leadership style throughout your years in college now?
Yeah, so being a part of Team USA definitely helped me because I was the youngest on the team. I was 20, and then I think the oldest was 32. So there's a pretty big age gap there, but, they have been playing the sport for so long. They're all coaches. Some of them were a part of 3 World Cup teams. So I think it's just like an awesome experience to be able to not only like suit up alongside some of the best players in the world, but also some of the best leaders in our sport and people who have played at the highest level for so long. I was just trying to absorb as much knowledge as possible from them, and it really helped me bring that back to UNC. And my senior year, I was a captain. So definitely developed those leadership skills from those who were before me that set a great example, and that was something that I always admired about them and wanted to do as well, and really set that example for those who came after me and for those young girls who look up to us athletes and want to be like us one day.
For you, being the youngest on the USA team and just trying to absorb as much as possible from everyone that was obviously kind of laid the groundwork for you on the team there, was there anyone that sticks out to you that you really absorbed a lot from, or just a general theme that you definitely took from that experience that was obviously helped you grow?
Yeah, I mean, everyone on the team they were all phenomenal leaders, and that's one of the things that our coaches looked at. Like, there are a lot of great lacrosse players out there, but there's a lot more to that, and so one thing that they looked for were people who could lead by example and be good teammates. And so there were a ton, but I think one person that sticks out to me a lot who's just been such an incredible person and is Cookie Carr. She actually played at UNC, but I think she graduated in 2010, so she's a little bit older than me, but she's been a part of, I think that was her second World Cup, but she's still on the U.S. team and fighting for a spot on next World Cup's team. So she could potentially play in 3, but I could be wrong. This might be her 4th. I don't know. But anyway, she is just such a great leader and is always checking in on us too. Like, not just on the field is she leading us. It's outside. We haven't seen each other for so long, and Cookie's always checking in on me, asking how I am, and getting to know us as people, not just as players. And I think that's really, really important for chemistry on the field, and also just to develop those relationships outside of lacrosse and on the field. And so she's just someone who's always stuck out to me as an incredible leader.
Awesome. Yeah, I think honestly, just talking to kids about just being a great teammate, there's so many different things, and from being a leader to a person, maybe even a player, it's not a bad thing in any way. Is there anything you tell kids that you sort of look for to be a great teammate or to be a great leader?
Yeah, I think that one thing that I always say is control what you can control. I think that there are a lot of things that happen, not only in lacrosse, but in life, that are completely out of our control and that cause stress and negativity. But what's the point of thinking negatively about something when it's completely out of your control and there's nothing you can do besides try and think positive about it? So I think that's one thing. And then also, like, one of the things that you can control is your work ethic. Another thing that you can control is your attitude. And those are two things that are so, so important, two qualities that are really important for great leaders to have. And I think that if you can control those things, then it can set you up for success in the future.
With you experiencing lacrosse through every level from high school to college to pro to national team, if you had unlimited resource, or before we get there, where do you see lacrosse for women's lacrosse in 10 years? And to get to best case scenario, if you had unlimited resources, what would you kind of do to help get it there and plant the seed?
Yeah, I think that where I see lacrosse in 10 years is in the Olympics. I know that we're all working extremely hard, knowing that we're probably not going to be playing in the Olympics in 10 years, but we want to see that happen, and we want to make sure that that's available for the younger generations of lacrosse, because we went through, not having that much access to it, or having a really short season and just being like the pioneers for the sport. And while I'm really happy of where we are now and the progress that the sport has made in the past couple of years, I think there's a lot of work to be done. And so, obviously the Olympics is a main goal. I think that lacrosse deserves to be an Olympic sport. And I know, like I said, all of us are working extremely hard to make that happen with testing out the Olympic rules that we've been going through at US. Connor, I'm sure you've played them at one of the training weekends. But yeah, and is it different? Yes, but there's a lot of things that need to happen in order for that to happen in 10 years from now. And so that's the main goal. And I know that we're all committed to doing whatever it takes to get it there for the younger generations.
Definitely. It's definitely a different game, but I think lacrosse is one of those things you can change it a little bit. I think it's for the better. Honestly, the faster pace, shot clock, like you said. Did you talk about, so if you had the unlimited resources, what would you sort of do to get there in terms of
I would, if I had the unlimited resources, I would get a majority of the women's lacrosse games on national television. That's the first step. We need to provide more exposure to the younger girls. We need to show them what they want to aspire to. Oh my gosh, that player's so good. I want to be like her one day. I'm going to go grab my stick and go outside and do wall ball. Like, that's what we need more of. And I think that that's the first step, is getting that exposure and then also expanding it into other areas. Obviously, lacrosse is known to be a sport. The demographics that play lacrosse is definitely leans towards, I think, one way, because it's an expensive sport. And so I think we need to provide more access to those in inner cities and other parts of the country that don't have that much access to this sport. And one thing that I'm doing right now is I'm on an associate board with Harlem Lacrosse, and that's one thing that I'm extremely passionate about, is raising more awareness for that, so we can get more girls and boys involved in the sport who may have not had that access before.
Brannigan talked about that too. We'd love to kind of help out with that somehow down the line. You mentioned working extremely hard to try to get lacrosse to be an Olympic sport. Besides just trying out the rules and stuff. What are you guys doing to try to make that happen? And why do you think it's not going to happen in the next 8 to 10 years?
So the Olympic process is pretty long, I know, in order to get a sport in. So we played in the World Games in 2017, which is something that you have to play in order to be considered for the Olympics. And then from there, the Olympic Committee, takes feedback back to others who are able to watch and kind of messes around with the rules a little bit, and then comes to the FIL and World Lacrosse Association with those rules. And so we've just been like in a testing period right now where we're testing out all these different rules. And it is weird. I think at first we were a little upset because we have such an incredible game that we love playing and we don't really understand why it needs to be changed. But I think that after playing it more and more and understanding, I think we all accept the fact that there are certain things that need to happen in order for a sport to be considered for the Olympics, and so we're willing to do that and commit to it. But it's a really long process. So obviously we'd love to have it in the Olympics before 2028, but I think 2020 is really that main goal right now.
Nice. 100%. We can hope. So I guess for before you're talking about just what you preach to the kids and their teamwork and obviously being a great teammate, were there people that you sort of leaned on, and you had great friends that were athletes as well? Did you lean on them? Was it your family, friends? Were there mentors that you sort of looked on to help you get to this point?
Yeah, I think there's a few people. So one, my older sister, she played lacrosse at Oregon, but I actually taught her how to play lacrosse. She didn't pick up a stick till her freshman year of high school, but for me, it was just like having her as a mentor and role model. She always worked her butt off, had a really strong work ethic both on the field and in the classroom, and I think that's what helped me. Like, I am so competitive, so I think it really stems from my family and my brother and sister. Like, we were just really competitive in the backyard playing sports and got in fights and everything, but I think that's definitely what shaped me into who I am today, and having that competitive fire and drive to always be better. And then I think my high school coaches, like I said earlier, had a really big impact on my life and really prepared me for the next chapter of my life. And my mom's sitting right there, and she said, "What about me?" I said my family. But yeah, so they kind of taught me how, like, certain leadership skills that were needed in order to compete at that next level. So it's just a combination of everyone between my family and coaches that I had at a younger level. And obviously when I got to Carolina, I had amazing coaches there who then helped me with the U.S. team, and then the U.S. team coaches helped me. So it's just a chain reaction of all of these different people in my life that have had some impact on it and really shaped me into the player and person I am today.
The mercy of my teachers, Connor. Just with everything you've learned throughout your different coaches, mentors, experiences, is there anything that sticks out outside of just we've hit on, like, don't just specialize in just lacrosse? Are there any bad recommendations that you hear, whether from a mentality standpoint or just lacrosse recommendations that you hear in the lacrosse world in your area of expertise?
I think that one thing that there's two things that I always leave clinics with, and the one was control what you can control, which I already said, but also be comfortable being uncomfortable. I know as females, we tend to shy away from uncomfortable situations, and I think that we need more females in sport that aren't going to shy away from that, and more that you can start to train yourself to be uncomfortable. In those uncomfortable situations, you're going to get better. And it's really hard. Like they always say, you have to fail before you succeed. And it's the same situation. Like something as little as, getting your arms back, that might feel weird because you were taught differently, but it's important. Rather than just going back to your old habits, get uncomfortable, do it the right way, and then you'll start to feel more comfortable with it. And get better. And so it's just little things like that are really important in order to be successful.
Are there any points in your career that you sort of felt uncomfortable or maybe struggled, failed? I know you talked about some your time after college, but early on that you struggled with that helped you progress?
Yeah, going back to my freshman year, I think it was like academically, it was on the field. My level of play just wasn't where it needed to be. And I think that I felt like I just took 3 steps backwards in my playing. But I don't think it's that I didn't have the skills. It's just like I had so much more to learn that I thought I already knew. And so I wasn't comfortable on the field, and I was learning all of these new stick tricks. I grew up in like a very traditional, Moorestown is very traditional with the way we do things. I had no idea how to do it behind the back until I got to college. And like now all these girls are in like 6th grade throwing behind the backs with their non-dominant hand, which is amazing. But like I didn't know how to do that. So I was so uncomfortable when we were going through like stick tricks and stuff. And I just felt terrible. Like I was like, I do not belong here. These people are so much better than me. So yeah, there were times. But again, like I then worked on those things because I didn't like how I felt. I didn't like how I felt like I was the only one who couldn't do certain things with my stick work. And so I spent extra time to work on those things. Am I going to do behind the back in the game? Probably not, but can I do it? Yeah. And I think that that's really important too, to understand, like, just because this might not be something that you're going to do in the game, like look at the bigger picture. How is this helping your stick work overall? So definitely felt uncomfortable when I first got to UNC and the girls were throwing behind the backs and Twizzlers and I had no idea what they were.
With where you're at now, is there anything that you still lose sleep over and when it comes to lacrosse, and like just general day to day? And then when you do feel overwhelmed, is there anything that you like to do to kind of step outside of lacrosse and unwind?
Yeah, I mean, with lacrosse, it's hard right now because I am probably going to go the longest I've ever gone without playing. We didn't have a season this year. All of our US stuff got canceled this summer. I haven't played since November, and so that's stressful, not knowing, like, the next time I step on the field, what the heck is going to happen, because I can practice in my backyard all I want, but nothing mimics that, style of play with some of the best athletes in the world, dodging and playing defense on them. Like as a midfielder, I play defense and offense. So that's pretty stressful, but I think if I keep working hard and working on my weaknesses, I'm trying to use this time to my advantage to work on those weaknesses and come out stronger than ever. And yeah, so definitely stressful, but also exciting, and can't wait till I can finally step on the field again. I'm so jealous of you, Connor.
So fortunate in that regard. I felt the same way in March, April. I was like, God, this is the first time I played in like a couple months, but it was eating at me. So definitely fortunate in that matter. Do you do any, we talk about stress and like, I guess, mental stress. Do you do any, I guess, meditation, or is anything you experiment with that in terms of sort of focusing or just being less stressed?
Yeah. One, when I'm getting like anxiety and worked up, I just like take a deep breath, and I always try to tell myself to list 3 things that you're grateful for. And so that's something I've done a lot these past couple of months, which has helped. But in terms of like visualization and getting ready for games, that's something that we always practiced at UNC with our head coach before every single practice. We came into a circle, we closed our eyes, she talked through it like a little meditation session, and gave us some time to visualize ourselves on the field, what we needed to work on. And I think that really helps stay motivated, because you're picturing yourself doing these things, and it makes you even more excited. Okay, like, yeah, in order to do that, they're like, I need to work on XYZ. So that's something that I've always practiced since I got to UNC, and something that we did every day before every practice and before every game.
Similarly, just switching gears a little bit, but with what brings you value, what's your favorite purchase under $100 that you get the most joy out of?
Probably food. I love food. I love going out. I mean, I like cooking, but I love going out and getting like a nice meal.
Yeah. What's your go-to staple?
My staple, tacos. So the reason why is because there's so many different kinds. You have like carne asada, carnitas, chicken tacos, fish tacos, shrimp tacos. I love, love, love Mexican food.
like?
Yeah, I follow a lot of food accounts for recipes, like a lot. And I've been experimenting a lot during quarantine. There's this like quinoa one that I found on Instagram that I make like every week now. It's so easy and so good. So yes, I do find all my recipes on Instagram.
That's awesome. So I guess during COVID, what has been like your biggest positive takeaway that you're going to take beyond COVID and continue to do?
Yeah, I think just connect with people more. I think that one thing that I learned is that technology is great and we have it, so we should use it and connect with people as much as possible. I know that I've had more, especially when this first started, I had more time to do that, so I was doing it. And that's something that I'm going to take away with me after COVID is just making sure that I'm checking in on my teammates, my friends, my family, rather than just being so distracted by everything else. And there's just no excuses for not being able to connect with people. And that's definitely something that I'll take away from this.
Wrap it up, Connor.
Yep.
All
We
right.
got it.
All right. So last question. This is the one we've been closing them all out with. If you could put something on a billboard, whether it be a quote or something like that, but something on a billboard for billions of people to see every single day, just driving to work or getting out of bed, what would you put on the billboard?
Okay, I guess I have to say the first thing that just came to my mind, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I might be butchering this quote, but it was the first thing that came to my mind, so I guess it means something to me. But it's champions are made when no one is watching. And I think I know it's Mia Hamm. It might be a little bit different, but basically just don't always do things just to impress others. Like that's not how you're going to get better. And the way you're going to get better at things, whether it's lacrosse, sports, work, it's when no one's watching you. What are you doing in that extra time to focus on yourself and do what you need to do in order to be the best person, individual, player, teammate that you can be?
Awesome.
Definitely.
I love that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's a good one. First thing that comes to the head. Those are the best ones.
I know. I was like, that's a hard question, but I guess that was literally the first thing that popped up in my head, so I had to say it.
Perfect.
Quick. A lot of people had to take a second. That was pretty quick for you.
It's a deep question.
Question. That's why we end it with. But again, thank you, Marie. This was awesome. Honestly, a lot of good insights for kids, and honestly, to hear your story was very cool. So thank you.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anytime. So I guess enjoy the lake this weekend, and hope to talk to you soon. But